Good morning. Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Frank. Uh, this is May 23rd, 2019. We're going to be continuing to read in this book here, It Will Never Happen to Me, which is by Claudia Black. And we're going to start where we left off, which means that we're going to be starting on Chapter 3. And Chapter 3 is called Don't Talk, Don't Trust, and Don't Feel. The best little boy in the world, he won't tell. Michael was doing very well in school. In fact, he was the brightest kid in the class. The teacher's favorite one of the best behaved. He never created any disciplinary problems and always hung out with a good crowd. The best little boy in the world. Why can't we all be like Michael and sit quietly? Sister Gratitude would say in her most melancholious voice, conform, be docile, do well, be quiet, hold it on, don't tell a soul. And now he was waiting at the school corner for his mother to pick him up. This was always the hardest moment. What will she look like? How will she sound? Michael could tell right away if she had been drinking. The muffled voice, the pale, unmade-up face. He really didn't know what it was all about. He just knew that when Dad came home, he would fight with her, argue, yell, scream, run. Michael could hear them through closed doors and over the humming of the air conditioner. He wondered if the neighbors could hear, too. Hold it in. Don't let anyone. Don't tell anyone. He was still waiting at the corner. She was 15 minutes late. It was so good to go to school and get out of the home or the house. But when 3 o'clock came, he would feel the same tension begin to gather inside him. He never knew what to expect when she was not drinking. She would be smiling, even pretty. When she drunk, she'd be cold, withdrawn, tired, unloving, not caring. Michael would cook dinner and straighten up the house. He would search for the alcohol. Like egg hunting on Easter morning, under the stuffed chair, in the bedroom, in the laundry bag, concealed among the towels, behind her hats, in the closet. When he found it, he'd pour it down the sink drain. Maybe then no one would know that she had been drinking. Maybe no one would fight. Don't tell a soul. She still hadn't come to pick him up yet. She'd never been 30 minutes late. But sometimes she'd sleep late in the morning after Dad had already left for work. And Michael would make breakfast for his little sister and himself. Then a friend's mother would take them to school, And the biggest problem was during vacation time, especially around the holidays, he wanted to play with his friends, but he was all afraid to bring them home. He was afraid to go out and play too, because then she would drink. Michael didn't want to be blamed for that. So he stayed in and did his homework and read. He didn't tell his friends, hold it in. But still, he was waiting alone on the corner. 45 minutes later, Michael decided to walk the 10 blocks home. He felt that he was old enough now. After all, he took care of his little sister a lot. He took care of his mother a lot. He was responsible. He always did what people told him to do. Everyone could count on him for help. Everyone did. And he never complained, never fought, never argued, never yelled. The best little boy in the world, hold it in. When he got nearer to home, Michael's heart felt as if it were going to explode. Her car was there. The house was locked tight. He rang the bell. He rang and rang as he felt his stomach turn inside out. He climbed through a window. No one seemed to be home. He looked around the house in all the right hiding places. Finally, in the closet in his own bedroom, he saw his mom in her slip with a belt around her neck and attached to the wooden rod. She was just sitting there, sobbing. She had been drinking, but maybe no one would find out. Michael wouldn't tell anyone, ever. Hold it in. Always got to apologize for my sinus. Oh, well. Never ending, that sinus. Next one is called here. It will never happen to me. Thousands of children are being or have been raised in homes where at least one parent is alcoholic and appear as children to suffer no apparent ill effects. These young people usually do not leave home prematurely. They are typically in that, as most children, they leave home at the ages of 17, 18, or 19. In venturing out on their own, they face the task of making decisions common to young people at these ages. They make choices about careers, lifestyles, friends, where and with whom they are going to live, and possibly whether or not to enter a branch of the military. They often make decisions about marriage and many make more decisions about having children. These children of alcoholics, along with thousands of other young people, begin to not only make some of the most important decisions of their lives, but to spend a number of years implementing those decisions. Typically, it will take the next 6 to 8 years to implement and follow through with these career and family decisions. During this time, young adults focus on external events. It is not normally a time when they sit back and contemplate how good or poor past years were for them. As young adult children of alcoholics leave home, Many having recognized the alcoholism, others not yet identifying it for what it is, they breathe a sigh of relief and pat themselves on the back for having survived. They then begin going about their own lives, but usually continue to stay socially and emotionally entangled with their family. It is about this time when a young person reaches the mid-20s, that this effects of growing up in an alcoholic home begin to become apparent. These now adult children of alcoholics begin to experience a loneliness which doesn't make sense to them. They become aware of feelings which separate them from others and find themselves depressed. As this depression occurs more frequently and lasts longer, the source of depression seems unidentifiable. Feelings of being fearful and anxious occur more frequently. Again, the source is not the identifiable. They have problems related to intimacy. They find that themselves having difficulty maintaining a close relationship, or find that something seems to be missing in their relationships. A lack of meaningful begins to permeate every aspect of their lives. And very possibly they are beginning to drink more, or they already find themselves in a relationship with someone who could become or is an alcoholic. It is very important to look back at the processes which have occurred and typically have not been recognized, let alone addressed, for this very special person, the child raised in an alcoholic home. Next little segment is called Don't Talk. The family law. Don't talk about the real issues. The real issues are: Mom is drinking again. Dad didn't come home last night. Dad was drunk or at the ball game. I had to walk home from school because Mom had passed out at home and forgot to come and get me. Some say it is a rule. I believe for most alcoholic families, it has become law. As one 9-year-old daughter of an alcoholic said, when you have a rule in your house for so long to not talk about Dad's drinking, it's really hard to talk now, even when he is sober. In the earlier stages of alcoholism, when someone's drinking seems to become a more noticeable problem, family members usually attempt to rationalize the behavior. They begin to invent excuses. Well, your dad has been working hard these past few months. Or your mom has been lonely since her best friend moved away. As the drinking increases, the drinking and the irrational rationalizations become a normal way of life. Family members focus on the problem drinking causes, but have difficulty associating drinking with those problems. An excuse offered to a child I had been working with for her dad's irrational alcoholic behavior was that he had a brain tumor and was going to die. The mother told the children their father wanted them to hate him before he died, so it would be easier for them to accept his death when it happened. This now adult person explains it didn't feel right. But who was I to question my mom's? She had enough problems as it was. As a child, this woman believed her father was going crazy. She felt his going crazy seemed more likely than his going to die from a tumor. She now understands her father acted crazy, but his erratic behavior was due to his drinking, his increasingly controlling and tyrannical moods, his inconsistent behavior related to his blackouts, as well as his open hallucinations, added to his appearance of craziness. I'm going to take a quick. It is easier to invent reasons other than alcoholism for crazy behavior. If the drinking takes place outside of the home and dad doesn't act falling down drunk when he comes home, or if they don't see him when he comes home, the children may more readily accept what the other parent tells them. Drinking is not the problem. If children do not understand alcoholism, it is difficult for them to identify their parent as alcoholic. Children are like adults in that they too will believe all alcoholics are old men on Skid Row without jobs or families. One adult person said, "My dad loved me, and I knew that." No one ever explained to her that alcoholic people are also capable of loving others. She believed because her father loved her, he could not be an alcoholic. She heard about alcoholism only once at church, where a recovering alcoholic told his story. But what she heard was that particular alcoholic a perception of his own drinking. She could not relate this same type of alcoholism to her father's drinking, or her father certainly couldn't sound, look, or act like this man who had been her only other contact with an alcoholic. Such fragmented information is typical of children. Lack of knowledge concerning the disease of alcoholism. Another way which helps family members rationalize the alcoholic's behavior is for them to not discuss or in any manner talk about what's really happening at home. 13-year-old Stephen said, "I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was the only one in my house who knew Dad was an alcoholic. I didn't know anyone else knew. I asked him why he believed this to be true. He answered, because no one else ever said anything." Steve described an incident which occurred when he and his father were at home alone. His father, in a semi-conscious state from drunkenness, was on the floor, had thrown up, hit his head on the coffee table, and was bleeding. Steve's mother and sisters had returned home within moments after his dad had hit his head. They just picked Dad up and carried him off to the bedroom. No one spoke to anyone else. Steve said again he thought, maybe this is all in my head. I asked the two older sisters and Steve's mother why they had not talked about this incident with Steve. They responded, because he hadn't said anything, and we hoped he hadn't noticed. I believe helplessness, despair, and hopelessness cause family members to believe if you just ignore it, maybe it will not hurt. If you just ignore it, it may just go away. And then there's a little cartoon in the book I think you can almost read it. It says, when my mother drinks, I picture that she doesn't. I never, ever talk about it. I'm not happening. I think I just so play. Many adult children have told me they were instructed not to talk about things which would upset mom or dad, or they simply learned by themselves that things went much easier when they did nothing to rock the boat. One young man said dinner was pretty quiet. Anything we said rocked the boat. And then if we were too quiet, that rocked the boat. These children not only don't talk about boat rocking issues, but they don't talk about or share their fears, worries, or hurts with anyone. Children who share the same bedroom with a sibling for years, both hearing the arguing taking place between mom and dad, or they hear mom crying night after night, but they only hear, they never speak to one another about it, although they may each cry silently and alone. In one family, the 6 children were between the ages of 12 and 21. When dad sought treatment for his alcoholism 3 to 4 months prior to seeking help, the father would return home late at night after having been drinking for several hours. Not having seen his children all day, he'd make his nightly rounds, passing from one room to another until he'd seen each of his children. He would scream, shout, and harass each child before moving on to the next room. All of the children were awake as he went from room to room, but they never spoke to each other about these nightly episodes. The family simply acted as though nothing out of the ordinary was happening. In another family, young Billy told me how he was taking the air out of the car tires so dad wouldn't drive when he was drinking. His youngest sister, Ann, was putting water in dad's vodka bottle. His oldest sister, Lisa, was putting apple cider in dad's whiskey. Each was unaware of the other's actions concerning dad's drinking because they were unable to talk about the real issue, their father's alcoholism. Well-adjusted children who experience daily childhood problems would most likely talk about these problems with other family members. Because of the denial of the alcoholism in an alcoholic family, seldom are any of the children's problems recognized, and the family problem, alcoholism, is never discussed. These children, accurately or inaccurately, do not perceive others, inside or outside of the family, to be available to help them. Many adult children of alcoholics have questioned where their aunts and uncles were when they needed them. Many wondered why grandpa and grandma weren't more concerned for them. Nora, another adult child, told me if she had told anybody what her home life was like, she couldn't possibly have been believed. They wouldn't believe me because it was so bad. I couldn't be looking so good. They never saw my mother getting drunk every day. They never saw her raving like a maniac passed out upstairs. They never saw her bottles all over the house. They just never saw. While many children fear that being believed, they may also experience guilt talking about the problems of their parents. They feel a sense of betrayal in talking about such duplicable problems. Children find the family situation so complex and confusing, they feel inadequate in attempting to verbalize the problems. When they don't know how to tell others, children feel very loyal to their parents, and invariably they end up defending their parents, rationalizing that it isn't really all that bad, and continuing in what has now become a denial process. It is most despairing to be a child in an alcoholic family, to feel totally alone, and to believe talking to anyone will not help. Sometimes I pretend my mom is not drinking when she really is. I never even talk about it. That's from Melody, age 9. The next segment is I Won't Tell. Give me a short break here. These two tiny spoons used to be set in small bowls of salt on my grandmother's dining room table. They come from Tilton Thurberg silversmith in Providence, Rhode Island. Her name was Eugenia Price Brewster. And would she ever be surprised at her son Benjamin's house? It all came back this afternoon when a stray jar of blackberry jam was discovered behind my bran flakes. I made it with berries picked 2 Octobers ago. Its backyard bushes were full of dark, ripe fruit. I set them one by one into the bucket and wondered why he let so many vodka bottles cover his floor. So many of his mother's bone china dishes served as ashtrays. Burial grounds for so many cigarettes. Some people wouldn't believe me. The empty half-gallon of Thunderbird wine was filled to within 1 inch of its top, and it was sitting in the blue and white flowered Copenhagen bowl that used to be piled high with fully fluffy potatoes whose Thanksgiving gravy was sprinkled with the diminutive salt spoons. She'd be amazed. Don't trust. I'm always on my guard with people I want to trust them. But it is so much easier to just rely on myself. I'm never sure what other people want. Children raised in alcoholic family structures have learned how to not trust others in talking about the real issues. They have also learned it is simply best to not trust that others will be there for them, emotionally, psychologically, and possibly even physically. To trust another means investing confidence, reliance, and faith in that person. Confidence, reliance, and faithfulness are virtues often missing in the alcoholic home. Children need to be able to depend on parents to meet their physical and emotional needs in order to develop trust. In alcoholic environments, parents simply are not consistently available to their children, either by being drunk, physically absent, or mentally and emotionally preoccupied with alcohol or with the alcoholic. Again, it needs to be noted that in talking about children in alcoholic homes, I'm talking about children responding to both the drinking and the enabling parent. These children respond to the alcoholic family system on the whole. Joan can't count on her mom to be attentive about what she has to say after coming home from school. Joan's mom doesn't smile after hearing about something funny which happened to Joan at school, nor is her mom very sensitive to her sadness. Usually, Joan's mom is preoccupied with what happened last night or what didn't happen last night as a result of Dad's drinking. Carl doesn't trust people to see his feelings as important. He may be angry about something that happened on the way home from school, but he usually doesn't say anything about it because there's enough to be angry about at home. Who needs more? Besides, they wouldn't understand. Bill cannot trust decisions his parents make. He told me that he can't rely on his dad to remember a promise to go for a drive on the weekend, or giving Bill approval to spend an evening at a friend's house. Nor can Bill count on his mom to support him if Dad goes back on his word. Karen cannot rely on her mom to be sober for her birthday, Thanksgiving, or Christmas, while Karen can't rely on her mom for sobriety during special occasions. Jack knows his mother will drink on those holidays. He said that uncertainty, the never knowing for sure how Dad was going to handle Mom's drunkenness, was most confusing for him. Alan, age 32, told me of a time when he was 11 years old. He had returned home from school and found his mother intoxicated. As he came through the door, she started an argument with him. She began to scream and shout at him, and he began to scream and shout back. This was typical after-school scene, but this time Mom picked up a broom and began hitting him about the head and shoulders. While Mom was screaming and hitting, Alan was ducking and hollering back at her. He ran to the telephone and called his father. Alan's father lived away from home. Alan was surprised when his father answered, but he did at least answer. Imagine the scene of 11-year-old Alan yelling into the phone, explaining what was happening, ducking the broom while his mother screamed at him and continued hitting him. His father shouted back into the receiver, "Don't worry, she won't remember it tomorrow." 21 years later, when Alan related this incident to me, he spoke with no effect or expression in his voice. I responded saying, "Alan, does that sound like a normal response to you?" Alan looked at me quizzically and said slowly, "Normal? I don't know. I guess. I have never really thought about it." Of course, Alan had not thought about it. Alan could not rely on his mother to be there, to respond emotionally, psychologically, or physically, or to meet his needs in any way when he was an 11-year-old boy. Alan could not rely on his father to understand his needs, let alone offer protection while he was being physically abused. Alan wouldn't find it emotionally safe to allow himself to respond with hurt, anger, or disgust to either his mother's beating or his father's lack of concern. But Alan did find it safe to detach himself and to not think about the incident. Alan, like so many others, learned through similar experiences not to trust. In order for children to trust, they must feel safe. They need to be able to depend on their parents for friendly help, concern, and guidance in responding to physical and emotional needs. Yet in alcoholic homes, children often cannot rely on parents to provide any of this safety. A child tells of how he never feels safe bringing friends home because it's always possible mom will be drunk and do something to embarrass me. Another says it is never safe even to play in our own yard because dad always seems to be sure to belittle me when my friends are around. These children live in a fearful environment. For some, their safety is more psychological. For others, it is psychological and physical. Children often tell of frightening times when the drinking alcoholic, when he is driving recklessly, or when fires are caused due to drunken negligence. Children's physical safety is often directly threatened when verbal harassment turns violent, when furniture is being broken, or certainly when persons in the home are actually physically and or sexually assaulted. It is difficult to trust a person who repeatedly embarrasses, humiliates, and disappoints or puts you in physical jeopardy. It is even more difficult to trust or attempt to regain trust when people aren't talking about incidences which are occurring in the home, when family members minimize, rationalize, and or blatantly deny certain events are taking place. Part of feeling safe is feeling secure. The feeling of security is seldom present for any length of time in alcoholic homes. Tim comes home from school one day to discover dad has lost his job again for the fourth time in 3 years. It means the family will be moving again. For Tim, it means giving up some new friends at a school which was just beginning to become familiar to him. And it means giving up the opportunity to make more friends through the little leagues he just joined. Another disappointment, Tammy finds out her dad gave away her purebred pet rabbit to a drinking buddy. She had been raising them from bunnies with the intention of entering them in the county fair that fall. Another hope shattered. David learns the family long planned summer vacation has to be canceled because dad loaned the vacation money to a stranger he met at a local bar. Another promise broken. Children continually are confronted with reasons to be insecure in their surroundings, to not trust. One adult child described his inability to trust this way. Trust? My dad couldn't even seem to take care of himself. Whatever he was, there was always a problem. At home, at work, with the car, with grandparents, with friends. If, if he couldn't take care of himself, how was he going to take care of me? No, I couldn't trust him for anything. And my mom, she was there, but that's all I can say. She was physically there, but I don't remember her ever trying to help us cope or understand. She was simply there. Children being raised in alcoholic homes constantly hear mixed messages, messages which teach distrust. A parent often gives a child false information intentionally in a feeble effect to protect the child from reality. A mother may tell the child she is happy when she is actually miserable. A father may reassure a child that nothing is wrong when the child can see mother is acting strangely. The child is confused because the one message is coming from his parents' words and a contradiction message from the body movement and tones of voice. Such confusing messages propel the child into a life of second guessing what is really happening. The single most important ingredient in nurturing relationship, in any relationship, is honesty. No child can trust or be expected to trust, and thus those around him are also open and honest about their own feelings. Alcoholics lose this ability to be honest as their disease progresses. As the alcoholic continues to drink, he has to rationalize his negative behavior, and he has to do it extremely well in order to continue his drinking. An alcoholic's life is consumed with feelings of guilt, shame, anxiety, and remorse, causing him to drink all that much more to attempt to escape it. It becomes a never-ending circle because of the psychological need to drink and the physical addiction to alcohol. Enabling parents are fearful of being honest with their children. They don't want them to experience the same pain they are feeling, and they don't want to acknowledge that the problem exists in the first place. While children don't require verbalization of all the feelings their parents experience, they do need validation and or clarification of certain specific situations and feelings. This validation or clarification doesn't happen in a home where not talking and not trusting permeates. A person takes a risk when he reaches out to trust another. Those persons who have learned to take the risk have experienced trusting to be a good process. They have also experienced a sense of security and a feeling of self-worth, which are both derived from feeling loved. All young people need to feel valued, to feel they are precious and special. While parents may speak to children and tell them they are special and loved, it is the parent's behavior which must substantiate the spoken word. It is behavior which allows a child to believe. Children need focused attention. Focused attention represents not only physically being with a child, but interacting with a child in a way which says, "You have all of my attention," mentally and emotionally. Focused attention says to a child, "I care. It is important for me to be with you." Children are highly sensitive to the degree of focused attention they receive. A child receives no sense of value from parents who are forever absorbed in their own affairs. While children don't need exclusive attention, it is a lack of focused attention. when others never have time to truly be with them, which causes them to feel unimportant. As parents, disease of alcoholism progresses and the need for and the preoccupation with alcohol becomes greater. The denial and the isolation from others due to the emotional turmoil within makes the alcoholic less frequently available to his or her children. As well, the co-alcoholic becomes increasingly preoccupied with the alcohol and her own helplessness and hopelessness, thus decreasing their availability as a response for the child. All these, Although these children are not totally ignorant as the alcoholism and co-alcoholism progresses, the availability of focused time decreases. When these families do spend time together, that time is often centered around drinking. Tim, age 15, told of how he was spending special time with his father. Both liked to fish and did so quite often during the summer, but although Tim always looked forward to the two of them spending time alone together, he was almost always disappointed because Dad normally brought along a drinking buddy. Dad and his buddy got so involved in their drinking and carrying on, Tim might as well have been totally alone. Tim spent time with his dad, but the time spent did not allow Tim that special time meant just for him and his father. The father's attention was always focused elsewhere, with or without Tim around. Children need focused attention most when they are under stress. Unfortunately, often in an alcoholic environment, this is when they are least apt to receive focused attention. Stress often becomes the norm in this environment, and it is very typical that the attention will then center around the alcoholic in the home. Thus, instead of turning attention to the child who may be having a problem, attention is turned away from the child, and the child's problem is never addressed. Children often find they do not trust carrying acts and focused attention when they do occur because of broken promises and not being able to rely on consistency of positive interaction. Children are often confused by them and many times don't trust the motivation behind them. A child might enjoy a trip to the zoo, but will question the motivation behind the trip. Although both parents may have agreed on this excursion out of sincere caring, the child perceives only the alcoholic parent's sense of guilt or the co-alcoholic's dominance in the situation. The child thinks maybe the parents do care in this one instance, but that feeling is overshadowed by the knowledge that neither parent may be relied on to be available at another important time in his life or her life. And they may always wonder, did Dad bring me this present because he didn't come to my piano recital last night? Or because he saw it and wanted me to have it out of his love for me? While children in alcoholic homes can and do survive, problems arise in their lives because their environmental circumstances have made it impossible for them to feel safe and secure, or to rely on or trust others. Trust is one of those vital character building blocks. Children need in order to develop into healthy adults. Being raised in an alcoholic family structure often denies or distorts this problem of a child's development. I have a hard time trusting my mom, Chuck, at the age of 6. And that'll be it for today. We'll be back on Tuesday. And the next segment that we're going to be going over will be Don't Feel. So in this case, we went through Don't Trust and Don't Talk. So those are the 3 segments that we've gone through. We've gone through Don't Talk and Don't Trust. So on Saturday, we'll go through the aspect of Don't Feel. Other than that, I enjoy reading this to you. And like I said before, I definitely can relate to what's being read. All those things that I have read to you, or most of them, have a direct reflection on my own personal life and how I feel and trust and don't talk. And that's just the way it is. That's the way it's been. And the beauty of it is, at some point, one will come to the reality that only I, that's me, can change it. And that does take a lot of time, and it does take a lot of patience. But I'm here to tell you that it can be done, but it's not easy. Anyway, I'm going to close this out. I'll pray for everybody. I hope everybody again enjoys it. I hope everybody takes a look at this, because it is a very fascinating and interesting book, and I believe it can be very helpful to many. So I want to thank you all that came, and have a great day. And I'll see you on Saturday. Bye-bye.